I get the question asked to me all the time, probably 100 times a year. You know, how'd you get your sponsors, or how did your sponsors, you know, come to you? Do they come to you? Do you go to them? You know, I mean, there's 1,000 questions on sponsorships. I'm gonna just try to, you know, shed some light on that subject, and you know, start off with saying, you know, the horse always comes before the cart. You know, a lot of people think that the sponsorship part comes first, and then you try to become a professional fisherman. That's not how it is. You know, I fished for about 3 years out of pocket, you know, basically paying my own way, with no sponsors, no paying sponsors, before I got my first paying sponsor. And that first year that I had my first paying sponsor, it was, you know, it helped offset a few expenses, I should say. You know, it was great to have a start, and I appreciate those companies that stuck their neck out a little bit with me. And but at the same time, it wasn't hardly a dent in my expenses. So, you know, it's taken me a while. You know, that was my 4th year that I had some paying sponsors. My 5th year I had some more paying sponsors, but still didn't cover all my expenses. And in the past 2 years, it's been pretty decent for me. But it's taken me 5 years to get there. So a lot of people are looking to jump right out of the gate and hit the sponsorship scene really hard, and it's hard to do. You know, the sponsors didn't just happen over 3 years. You know, I was you know, working hard to try to establish relationships with the right companies, the companies that I thought were going to be able to pay me what I deserved in order to give them publicity that they wanted. You know, try to find that right relationship. And you know, I feel like right now the companies that I'm with, that's the best marriage that I could ask for. You know, Advanced Auto Parts is looking to make a bigger name for themselves in the fishing industry, and they're doing so. Their market research has proven it. They're, you know, as far as the bass fishermen's concerned, they've gone from the number 4 place where people think about buying auto parts to the number 2. And you know, hopefully within the next year or two we'll be number 1. I mean, and to go in a bass fisherman's mind, for a company to go from 4th to 1st as far as where that person's going to shop, you know, that's huge. That's huge, and that's the kind of stuff that companies are looking for. You know, as far as you know, I'm with B.A.S.S now. I was with Ranger for about 5 years, and was a great boat. A lot of good people at that company, but their company was going in a direction that didn't see me in their picture, and it got to a point to where their sponsorship level was my 2nd worst sponsor. Out of 10 sponsors, they were my 2nd worst. So I had to evaluate things, and I looked at a lot of boat companies. There's no, you know, not hiding that fact. I looked around, tried to see where I was going to be the best fit, and really fell in love with the boat. The year before I switched over to B.A.S.S, really kind of fell in love with it that year. One of my roommates that year, Russ Lane, he had one, and I really got to look at it and play with it a lot, and check it out, and I really fell in love with the design, the way it was laid out. So when the opportunity came to work with Rick Pierce, you know, I already knew the product and liked the product, so you know, I had to make sure that it was the right fit for me, and met with him and his family, and you know, loved the company, loved where they were, you know, and their family atmosphere fits in with my family atmosphere. I've got a lot of family ties and real close with my family, so that worked out in a great relationship. But these are things that have taken years to develop. It didn't just happen overnight. You know, the Pierces knew who I was because I've been fishing full time for you know, 5 years before we got established. And that's the things a lot of people don't understand. It takes time to build all these relationships. It takes time to get these things together. You know, the best comparison I can tell people to help them understand what's going on is that you know, my career is a small business. That's exactly what we do. We are in a small business, much the same way as someone is a realtor or someone has a retail store. Much the same. It's very similar. You know, it takes sometimes years to establish those jobs before you're actually making a real living at it. You know, you gotta scratch and claw your way for a few years before you get established enough to be credible, build your reputation, build your name, you know, which is the same as building your brand. In bass fishing, they talk a lot about building your brand. You know, when somebody's name pops up, you know who they are. You know, Rick Clunn's done a great job of that. When people say Rick Clunn, they know Rick Clunn is the crankbait master. He is. He's the Zen master. He's the crankbait, because that's just who he is. And he's done a good job of being himself, and people know who he is. But you know, going back to this, it took him years and years to develop that. It did not happen overnight. I'm seeing more, you know, since I've been in the sport, I've seen more people come in quicker and establish a name for themselves and make a living quicker than probably there's ever been in history. So there's more opportunities now than ever for sponsorships and for people to develop sponsorships quicker. So they should definitely be more optimistic about the whole sponsorship picture, but don't get too much in a rush, because they do take time, they do take years to develop.